I'm Angela Kelly Robeck, host of the Empowered Principal Podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome, folks, to another episode of the Hitech Podcast. This is your host, William Illingworth, joined, as always, by my good friend, my colleague, my gaming pal, my Lord of the Rings watching friend, my Star Wars nerd, Joshua Swartz, my other co-host. How you doing, my friend?
Oh, that was such an intro. That was nice. That was good.
Just build me up. I don't know. I just started.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah. All
Feel a
those
little
things
awkward.
back, like all those things right back at you. You know?
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah,
Thanks, man.
exactly. Yeah, anytime. Yeah, what's up, people? Welcome to the Hitech Podcast. It's another week. I don't know.
Episode 133. This is season 6.
Season 2.
Season
Whoa!
2.
Surprise! Just like Doctor Who, we jumped into a TARDIS and we're time traveling back.
Time traveling.
Yeah.
Dude, we have been doing this for a minute. This episode's releasing on January 23rd of 2024. We started the podcast in 2021. Can you believe it? We're not at 3 years yet, but we're coming up. We're coming up on 3 years of this podcast.
We're getting close. Yeah.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. If you've been listening to us for all 3 of those years, first of all, thank you. Second of all,
We're
it's
sorry.
it's probably time to get up out of your chair now and go
do something else.
Yeah, I don't know. I had that image of somebody just listening to our podcast for 3 years. That's been it. That's been all they've been doing. Yeah.
Amazing. We're excited for 133 here to be introducing a new friend. We love friends in the podcast. We've made so many. But Priten Shah is going to be joining us in this interview. We did not honestly know anything about Priten until he reached out to us, and we're very thankful he did. This is an AI conversation. Priten's been doing a lot of work in that space, but we're going to hear not only about the tools he and his teams are creating, but some of the work he's doing, not only as a developer, right, the technical side of dealing with AI, but as a philosopher, someone who cares deeply and is thinking deeply about AI. I have a lot of the philosophy. I care very deeply about the philosophy of AI, and I know nothing about how it works. So, not to say that this conversation gets too technical, but Priten knows what he's talking about, and his teams clearly are helping him get together, these tools like Socrat and Pedagogue that are really doing the work. They're awesome. So we hope you check those tools out, check his book out, but also just the overall interview is a good time, making new friends and learning more about someone who's doing the work in this space. If you're scared about AI, someone like Priten is going to help you understand what it's doing, why it's doing it, and how you could take advantage of it yourself. I think all of us have the opportunity to use AI to our advantage. There's just always reasons why we wait or we hesitate or we run away from it in the opposite direction. I don't know. Josh, do you run? I don't know if we need to, are we runners? I think we're kind of like light joggers on the podcast.
I'm more of a crawler, if you will. I like to, I'm excited for this episode. It's not often we get somebody who comes from both a philosophical background and a technical background. Like you'll hear as he describes some of his background, just the diverse route this guy has taken into getting into education. And I think out of that has become quite a resource for educators. So I'm super excited to have him on the podcast and talking about his background and jumping in. We've done a series on AI, opening AI, where we talked a lot about the basics. This episode, like Will said, is not going to get super technical, but we're not going to focus on talking about what is AI and all those basics. It's a lot of kind of more of a broader conversation about where AI is going, what we think it's doing, and kind of how his team helps educators. So I'm excited to check that out.
All right, man, let's turn it over. We're going to go right into the interview here with Priten and hear more about all of his tools, his book, and what he's doing for AI in education. All right, we are excited to be here with Priten Shah. We have just met, but we're very excited to be new friends. That's the essence of the podcast, of the Hitech Podcast. Everybody who joins us is a friend, and we're happy to have you here with us, Priten. Thanks for taking the time. How are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. And yeah, I'm excited to be friends. So let's talk.
I don't want to presume too much, but I think we could be friends.
Yeah, we could be friends.
I think so too.
LinkedIn apparently wants us to be friends, according to you.
Exactly. That's true. The algorithm has said so we must.
The algorithm has spoken. It's mildly concerning and yet quite useful. Quite useful when it works. Priten, if you would, give us a little bit of your background. So you've got everything AI, your website's so cool, you've got so much happening right now with like different platforms and CEO of this and that, but tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into education, what you're doing today.
Yeah, I have the weirdest story. Well, I'm sure lots of folks who come about education non-traditional paths, but I actually started my first ed tech venture as a high school sophomore, and that's when this all kind of started. So this is very early on in the Khan Academy stage. It was that was the new thing that was coming out at that point. And we were a bunch of high school students, and we wanted to try to see what we could do with the internet to help other students. And we put out videos for New York State Regents exams. We were doing live tutoring for free online. And we were just trying to explore email responses for students looking for homework help, or we had students on call answering questions when a student would send out a homework help question or whatever. And that was my first foray into thinking about using technological solutions for the educational space. And that journey has kind of just led to all sorts of different detours. So I taught English in South Korea. I've done some, I student taught with a special education class in New York. I run a civics education nonprofit where I teach every summer about civics. And all of this influences my work in some way. And that's why it's all important. My undergraduate was in philosophy. And so even though I do a lot of technical work on a daily basis, I'm a developer, but I'm a philosopher who can code, not a coder who philosophizes as a primary identity. And then I went to ed school to do a little bit more digging into education management and policy and thinking about the bigger picture one more time in a formal setting after I'd done all my random detours everywhere else first. And then since then we've kind of just been trying to help educators navigate different crises. That's kind of been the common theme between all the projects, especially since the 2020 election. The civics project kind of really blew up at that point because teachers were struggling with figuring out how to navigate difficult civic discourse and public discourse. We spent a lot of time during the COVID-19 pandemic helping all sorts of institutions transition to online learning. We built some really cool platforms to help educational institutions keep their activities online. Things like banking systems for people who used to use paper cash for an in-person camp. All kinds of different tech solutions to kind of help students get the same experience that we're getting in person during COVID-19. Wow. And then AI came out in the waves, and we are getting responses from all these educators about another crisis. Do you have anything for this? And I was crisis? This is exciting. Where's the crisis here? I was this is technology that I've been dreaming about, right? I was looking at Sanskrit and language models in college. I've been talking to my clients about reasoning and AI, and whether we could help it with help students learn reasoning through that. And these were all really hypothetical conversations before OpenAI really made all this stuff popular and accessible to all of us. But yeah, so when folks started reaching out with crisis, I was wait, this is not a crisis. This is really exciting. We can do some really cool things here. And that's when we put out Socrat.ai. And that was kind of our look, here's a really cool, easy way to think about how we can actually think about AI in helpful ways that's also responsible to our students, scaffolded for you as an educator. And that basically allows teachers to create their own little mini AI bots for students, and with transcript accessibility for the teacher. It kind of keeps the topic on hand, all those kinds of things. But it, honestly, it's much more people aren't ready for that yet. And so mainly it's my look at what we can be doing. If you all of y'all stop talking about plagiarism, than it is yeah, it's definitely much more a thought leadership piece for me right now. With let's really start envisioning the future. But yeah, I just said a lot, so I'll let y'all
No, and I'm even looking at
Yeah.
Socrat.ai's site right now, and anything from Socratic dialogues to role playing, but like Debate-a-bot, like you've got a couple different characteristics or persona even in the tools you're trying to develop, which I love. But the idea that you said like you're reacting to crisis with excitement,
Yeah.
those of us in the trenches, quote unquote, are like crying, barely getting through the day.
Yeah.
Preten's over here like, look what we can do. And
Yeah.
I get that. I mean,
Yeah.
I remember, we've talked about it a bunch on our podcast, but I remember when the COVID-19 happened and our faculty were freaking out. I was still in higher education and nobody knew what was going to happen. Nobody knew how we were going to teach ballroom dance, Tai Chi, and Spanish online. Just they couldn't get their heads wrapped around it. The only one I never figured out was scuba diving, and everything else we made work. But you're right. Like, in crisis is opportunity. There really is space to grow and to reach for things like this. And I know of some work a colleague of mine did to build like these kind of bots that you're talking about in classrooms before a tool like this. And I know he would cry to see Socrat.ai where he could just plug and play as opposed to having to build the thing himself. This is amazing.
Yeah, that was the goal was kind of like show teachers that like you don't have to like kind of throw students into the Wild West and give into a lot of the like the things we're worried about with giving them full access to, like having them go on ChatGPT and telling them to do something when they could open a new chat and literally ask any question they want. I think that like deters a lot of teachers, especially in the middle school, like early high school market, from like really thinking about using it with students directly. And this is our like, okay, like, yes, these things are like really not honed for education yet. Yes, we haven't like really thought about all those things in terms of like how do we make sure that students have some like guardrails as they're using these things, but it's doable.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is doable, right? Like this is not maybe like everything's not built perfectly for us right at this moment, but this is all definitely within the near future. And I think that's where, so hopefully we can start thinking about some of the positive uses of this.
Yeah, when people talk about ChatGPT for the classroom, a lot of folks are just like, try it out. That doesn't mean a whole lot when somebody doesn't know what to do at all. You don't know what to do with ChatGPT. And I'm seeing tools like yours pop up in this space where it's like folks have learned, folks with your expertise, folks with your interests, Priten, they're getting in there and going, let me build some guardrails so you can use it. Let me build something so that you've got a safe space to make the most of the tool. Right. Good. Please do that. Like, if there's enough of me's out there that are interested in using ChatGPT, but don't have the technical expertise to make it more efficient or more effective, like I need you, and teachers need you to do this work so that they can just start to teach. That's ultimately every teacher just wants to teach. They don't want to go through the work of doing all the other stuff to make it better or make it more effective or make it easier to use. They just need stuff that works.
Yeah. And I think this is where like a lot of this last year has been so hard on folks, right? Because I think like the knowledge gap is so wide right now. Even with like a random person on the street in America, like the amount of like pre-knowledge they had about AI, computer science, coding, even, right? Like logic statements, if else statements, anything like that was so low. My favorite example is that like we spent a lot of COVID like just telling folks how to mute and unmute, and these like that was a real challenge, right? Like that was an actual challenge that we tried solving for 2 years, was getting like educators to like just make sure that like muting was done properly. And now suddenly they're being told about these like large language models and generative AI, and like there's this like wait, like where's all this other literacy that I need to develop beforehand? And so we're trying to bring some of the AI stuff, we're trying to bring down to them. But we also do work on the other end, and we try to like help teachers build that AI literacy. And that's where our work at Pedagogy.AI comes out, where we're working directly in professional development environments. We provide like an accredited online course with one of the first ones on generative AI that kind of helps teachers like think about this from the big picture. We have a crash course that's just like, okay, like if you've just been like tuned out and you're realizing this isn't going away anywhere, like here's your quick run through it. And then we like handhold teachers in person. Like we go to schools, we do workshops, and we're like in the room with them, helping them figure out the difference between like the search bar and the ChatGPT message box. And like that's a problem we've tried, like that's real. Like that's where folks are at.
Yeah,
that's awesome. I love that. I think based on I think this is a good way to say it, Priten, that based on your description of even your background and what you did, like got here, it just seems like you're continually trying to find places to like find solutions and look for the opportunities and help teachers do that in the midst of their kind of craziness and busyness. So I think that's super cool. because I know like you're joking about it, but it's a reality. Like, I haven't put it this way before, but I like the way you're putting it. I've kind of like, just a couple of years ago, we're helping people unmute from Zoom. So
Yeah.
like the reaction to AI that they're having in many places shouldn't surprise us when like it's
Right.
such a different, like much bigger, different thing than what we're
Right.
seeing just even in Zoom and those smaller environments.
Yeah. And I think like just like the recency of the COVID-19 crisis, I think makes everybody just like on edge about it anyways. And I think folks expect it to go away, which like I think that's one of the like big differences with COVID-19. Like, this isn't going away. There's no like, oh, the pandemic's over, or like the AI pandemic is over. And so I think folks are like are kind of resisting adapting a little bit. And then the change is rapid. Like, at least with COVID-19, like we woke up the next day and we were like, okay, like this is it for like the near future. Like, but there's not like continuous new developments. Like we had to figure out how to teach from our homes, and like students were home. There were new developments in terms of when it was going to end, but like the actual crisis didn't change, right? In terms of what it was doing for education. With AI, like it's every 2 months, it's like a new snowball effect of like, oh, like now we can search the internet, and now we can do this, and now like AI detectors don't work, and I think that like that's all making this very, very, very exhausting for folks.
And for our audience sake, we are recording this on December 12th, 2023. Within the last few weeks, we celebrated the 1-year birthday of ChatGPT, right? Like the end of 2022, it came out, it burst onto the scene. Those with some background know that it's not the first LLM, that they know it's not like the actual genesis of this technology, but
Right.
ChatGPT as we know it today, and the access people have had to this kind of tool, is 1 year old as of recording this.
Yeah.
And yet it feels like we've made 6 or 8 years of development in that time with what people are doing. All these different AI type tools, all the different conversations on AI, the laws about, like, everything is happening in one short year. AI has been hit from every angle. Can we put it in cars? How do we have to legislate it? Can I use can I use it in my refrigerator? Can I use it in the classroom? Should I before we got on recording, I saw a LinkedIn post about a professor venting about the issue of a graduate level student submitting a ChatGPT paper to him for a graduate level course. And he said, I know it is because I used just enough prompts and got ChatGPT to produce the same paper for me, paragraph by paragraph, that the kid wrote.
Yeah.
You wrote with ChatGPT. So like all this is in front of us, and it's 1 year. Imagine what's going to happen by 2033. The potential is in some ways limitless, but you've given us Socrat.ai and Pedagogy.AI, some of those tools that are is there, what else you got in the background? Are there more tools hiding out there? I think you've got a book. Like, talk to us about your platform altogether.
Yeah, I think the book is the final like part of this piece, and I think that's where this was written really quickly, and this was my like little, let me put my thoughts in one place, like kind of like help me think through these things in a coherent manner and kind of think about this from all different angles, but also like it's as practical as possible. So like no one needs to know the history of large language models in order to teach, right? Like it's just like it's not necessary in order for you to use ChatGPT. But also no one needs to like be like an expert in one particular tool. And that was one of the things that I was trying to like shy away from in the book. It's like it's not a ChatGPT book, it's not a Bard book. It's like it's actually an AI book, right? It's kind of like let's think about what like all the potential for this technology is as a whole. And then I think the other like goal with the book is to kind of like get us to like this midline, right? Like I'm really excited, but I'm also a philosopher. And so I'm doomsdaying about all of this stuff too, right? So like I have lots of ethical problems with this stuff. I'm worried about the bias in here. I'm worried about like the singularity, right? All of it. Like this is an all level. I'm worried about the environmental impact of the technology, right? Like this isn't just like an easy, like, oh, this is all good. And while the computer scientist in me maybe wants to be like, yeah, like this is great, like this is becoming popular, everybody's talking about it. I'm worried about what this means for society. And so like the book, I'm hoping kind of like does a job of like helping teachers think through those things, figure out what issues do they need to consider before they bring a technology into the classroom, what kind of things should they be talking to their students about, but also just like kind of help them navigate what are the changes that have happened overnight.
Yeah, I love all that. And one of the things that I think, we talk about enough, I'm a doomsdayer, but at the same time, but at the same time, I use it. I can't think of a tool in my daily work that doesn't have an AI element implemented in it at this point. I honestly, my top tools have some element of AI, maybe not LLM level or ChatGPT level, but like making autonomous decisions for me or creating content autonomously, whether that's transcriptions, audio, voiceover, stuff like that. Like I use AI every day in my work. And it's not even like I'm a Priten Shah. Like I don't know. You've got some of the technical background. I'm not doing that stuff. I just use it. It is in my workspace. I can't ignore it. And I think that can be tough for our educators. I remember working in a district once where I was just teaching on an LMS, like, hey, here's how to use the LMS, grade book, assignments, blah, blah, blah. And I had a gym faculty member, a gym instructor come up to me and say, I appreciate you. You're really nice, but I'm just here because I have to be. I'm planning to retire in 2 years and I am not going to use this thing. Yeah. That was, 5-6 years ago. And that was just about an LMS. I know that attitude is pretty high among instructors today too, just about AI. Are you feeling some of that pushback? Are you seeing folks who you have to it takes a lot more to convince because of that doomsday attitude?
Yeah, this is unfortunate. I think we still make some pushback, right? But I realize that when I'm in the room doing this PD or talking to a group of teachers for the first time, they all hate me. The first 30 minutes in, I can see it on their faces. They're livid. I'm talking about why AI detectors don't work. I'm talking about why they have to learn this technology. It's not going away anywhere. And all I'm seeing is huge seething faces everywhere. And then eventually, we kind of when we break out of our presentation, we're kind of have conversations. We're okay, this is navigable. We can kind of figure this stuff out together. Here are some easy steps at the beginning. But there's still folks in the room who are just we have a huge group of folks who are just my only job is to police this. I want to make sure students aren't using it in the wrong way. I have this new tool that's going to help. And I don't want to hear anything else. I don't want to hear about why those are not effective. I don't want to hear about why I should be embracing it. I don't even want to use it in my own work because I don't want to plagiarize, right? And that group is still, I think, it's hard. We spent the last year talking about plagiarism. The initial headlines caught that. That was the most jarring effect it had on education overnight. And so it's really hard to get out of that. And folks are just that first impression is kind of sticking a little bit for some folks. And those folks, we're hoping that kind of telling them they have no other choice, right? It's which again, hence the hatred. And then there are folks who are just I don't we often have PD with gym teachers in the classroom. It's the kids don't even have devices. And so we'll be but you can have them make nutritional plans at home and come up with custom work, right? There's we'll try to find ways to integrate everybody into the flow because I think everybody could potentially use it, right? There's no real subject I can think of that couldn't in some way use AI technology. But everyone's not convinced of that either. And then there are folks who think it's going to go away. And they're just it's a fad. You're just talking to me about the new learning styles, the new this new tool that's out there. And we're no. This is not I'm not talking about ChatGPT, right? I'm not here's this one cool tool that you all should learn about. I'm not a ChatGPT PD trainer. I'm here to have conversations about what we all need to do to revamp our entire educational system. It's that's not received really well either. So it takes multiple moments. We have folks who they'll tend to they'll be okay, let me follow their Instagram because they post news all the time, and then they'll be oh, maybe I should read this book, and then they'll be oh, I'll attend a webinar, and then it's can I try to use this tool, right? But it takes so much of that slow progression through the hoops to see the potential and kind of start to see that okay, this is there's some cool things here, and these the challenges are things we can actually deal with.
Yeah, that's super cool. I'm curious, Priten, in your experience in some of this PD, and by the way, I totally get your feelings of the walking in the room and you're oh, okay, a lot of people hate me in this room right now. I think Will and I laugh because I think we've both been in those situations leading that PD related to technology, and you're you're only here because you have to be, and you're gonna try as hard as you can during this PD to prove everything I'm saying is either wrong or that you don't need to be a part of it. But I'm curious, what are some of the I guess opportunities that you share with educators to kind of get them excited about AI? What are some of the things that you share as this is some of the prime opportunities that AI could have in their own environment? What are some of those examples?
Yeah, I think that we found it's easiest to talk to teachers about ways they can integrate it themselves. So if I talk to them about Socrates on the first shot, or I talk to them about like student-facing prompts, they that like freaks them out immediately. They're like, I don't know about how parents will react. I don't know what is allowed by my school. I don't know what the network filter, right? All of that, right? So all the concerns are like, I can't put this stuff in front of my students. And so we start with like, here's how you can update your lesson plan, make a lesson plan. Here's how you can make a worksheet. Here's how that really creative exercise you had thought about, like in the shower one day, like, and you realized that was going to take you like 10 hours to develop, and you really were just like, I don't have that kind of time, could now probably happen in like 15, 20 minutes if you use AI. And those kinds of conversations are where the folks are like, oh, well, I can still be the human in the loop, right? Like I can have ChatGPT make this thing and I can check it and make sure that this is not like a terrible thing I'm putting in front of my students. My students don't ever need to like interact with AI. And it saves you time, right? Like that's when we start to see like folks like, okay, like at least maybe I'll like use it. And that's definitely that's when we know we've got it, right? Like that's when we know that they'll start opening up. Once they start seeing potential for their workflow, it's really easy for the teachers to, like teachers want to serve their students best. And so immediately once you're like seeing how it impacts your workflow, how you're thinking better, how it's helping you approach something in a better way, then you're like, okay, maybe my students can use this in a way that's productive and not just harmful.
Yeah. Well, and that comes down to modeling. Like I think one of the things that many instructors are scared of is they're just going to cheat. But what they don't understand is if they use it well, they'll demonstrate to the students how to use it well. Like calculators, yes, some students are going to use the calculator to make a game on it and turn it into a Game Boy. Some students are just going to use the calculator to do the math for the assignment in the room. Like, are we going to ban calculators because kids in the 90s were bored and made video games on them? No, we're not going to ban calculators, the TI-83, etc. I think there's this natural, we all know the kind of I can't remember the name of it now, of course, at the moment, but like the adoption loop of like people are going to be the early adopters to laggards. Those folks who are dealing right now with this impact, the shock wave of ChatGPT in their laps, they're not ready to know what it can do. They're just scared of it. And it's tough. I get it. There's parts of it I'm scared of, but I know for myself, if I am stuck on an outline trying to get something into a visual form, right? If I throw it into one of my AI generators and it shoots something out that I like the look of, I can start there and then, make it prettier, make it work, make it become a real e-learning once the AI has done its work. So everyone's going to start to use it at some level,
right?
Helping our teachers become comfortable with it, maybe assuring them that some of the risks are manageable and that it's not going to be the Terminator are some really helpful initial steps to win them over. Do you think we'll see the Terminator in the next 5 years? I mean, here's the Hitech Podcast taking like a joke.
No, I don't think we're
going to see it. Right? He's like, we're going to see it in 5 years.
It's here already. We're just like, that's where Sam Meltmo's fired. I mean, I'm not going to pretend to be able to predict anywhere where this is going. I have zero clue. And I think that, and I readily admit in every context, right? Like whether it be the book or whether it be in person or like a conversation like this, where like, I think we just have to kind of be prepared for everything at this point. I also do think that there's like fundamental things that we can all be prepared for regardless, right? So I think like educational systems, like I think thinking about the fact that career readiness might mean something really different in 5 years, and like our ability to predict what correct career readiness means is even further diminished than it ever was. Like, I mean, I don't think we were ever like fully able to predict exactly what careers our kindergartners were going to have available to them. We don't even know what careers our like college freshmen will have available to them at this point. And that might just mean we rethink like what kinds of things we do, what kinds of like approaches we have, or like maybe return a little bit back to like thinking about education as a place for folks to like learn how to flourish and like be better humans, right? I think that will always like if education is about making people be better humans, like doesn't matter what AI does, right? Like it's like that's like that will always be like that. We can predict enough to know that will always be valuable. But yeah, I don't know about the Terminator. I don't know, like.
I don't think we're going to be up against that.
It already speaks better sometimes than Schwarzenegger, so we're probably fine. It's so. That's I'm curious. Your thoughts on this, Priten. We've talked about this a bit on our podcast about how one of the side effects I think of AI coming out is kind of I don't know, resurgence is probably not the right word, but like a kind of resurfacing conversation of actually the importance of humanness, like, and of humanity involved. Have you been seeing that in some of the conversations? I feel like Will and I've talked about this a little bit, where like we've seen some of almost like where people keep talking like they're almost afraid we'll lose some of the humanness involved in this stuff. And I've almost seen the opposite, where like this has caused some conversation to talk about the value of our own kind of humanness and our involvement in the way we do our work and educate and jobs and all those different components. I'm curious, have you seen some of that conversation coming up as well during your time looking at this stuff?
Yeah, and I mean, yes, in all kinds of contexts. Like this is my favorite conversation to have, is about just like talking about like humanness, right? Like as someone who's like spent a lot of time thinking about civics education, like that's a huge component of this for me. Is just like, how do we interact with other humans, and being a better human is part of that. But there's also just like there's some like there's things we experience that like will always be valuable, right? Like joy will always be valuable to us. Like there will always be an epiphany moment that where our thoughts connect that will always be valuable to us. And that's where like no matter what AI can do, what it's doing, like if we can help students embrace those kinds of things, like I think we're way better positioned. Like language learning, right? Like sure, like you can be in a different country and this AI tool can be translating all the languages for you, but like that's nowhere close to reading poetry in the original language. There is a like particular emotional effect of reading the original poetry that will always be true. There's a particular effect of being able to like talk to another human without a computer interfacing in between you, with the natural flow of it, with like being able to grasp the exact meaning of words that don't have a meaning in your like target language. All those kinds of things, like we like that doesn't matter what AI can do. Like we still will need to learn languages if we want to fully embrace that kind of like experience for ourselves. We still teach kids how to run, right? Like, that's my go-to example these days is like cars go really fast, right? Like they can go super fast these days. Like, but like we still like have kids go outside and run. Like there's reasons why you can do things that are like fundamentally done better by technology, but like there are good reasons why we should still do them too.
That's amazing.
I love that.
It makes me think of Wally right away. Like there is a world, there's a dystopian
world
where someone's imagined.
Yeah.
We don't need to run anymore, so we'll just sit.
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, we don't have the fastest technology yet. There's going to be faster. There's like Moore's law and some others that suggest what that looks like as technology develops. But we do not need to run anymore. Running is not a required skill to be human, and yet you're right. It is a part of just K-12 education. It's a part of many people's just physical exercise and health maintenance. But it's competition too. I mean, it's practical and it's professional. People still run, even though the tools are there that do not require us to do it anymore.
People pay money to see other people run, right? Like it's like this is right. Like it's not. But like I'm serious, right? Like it's like the supersonic jet can go way faster, but like people will go watch races.
And there's the e-bike. When the e-bike came out, I was like, okay, people are done. Like we don't need to bicycle anymore. We don't need to run anymore. The e-bike is here. You just plug it in and you zip around. And I still see people running. So you're right. I don't think the technology is going to reduce the humanness. But I don't want to say this in a way of degrading a certain perspective. But there's an attitude that can be fear-mongerish. I don't want to degrade those folks because they're processing a real experience, right? I don't see it as a bad thing to be scared of what this could be, but I think there's some parts of that attitude that become that rely or lean too much on the ignorance over curiosity. And when we're ignorant of something, we're scared of it typically. So there's an opportunity here to be curious about what's possible. And I think some of my experiences with like AI and advanced robotics technology come through in a medical context. My father had a surgery performed on him that would not have been possible without robotics surgery and like a doctor controlling a robot with his fingers like this, going through a like that stuff is amazing. And that's not even built on what AI is capable of doing today. That technology is 30 years old. I'm imagining what we could do medically, what we could do with the smartphone. There's a thing going around right now, the AI pin or whatever. I don't know if it's a Kickstarter or what, but like it's someone envisioning what would our experience today of a phone be like if it was this big and it was managed by AI and it was an AI tool. That imagination I think that we can bring to this is so exciting. at the same time, we're still trying to figure out what we need to do with kids who grew up with smartphones, who don't know how to separate themselves from social media.
Right.
Like we have AI in front of us, and yet there's still problems from 15 years ago, 20 years ago, where we haven't yet, we've got stuff in the laws, in the houses, in the Senates right now of is social media bad for youth, and do we need to be controlling that? Because that's something that cropped up 20 years ago, and we don't know what to do with it yet. We haven't figured out civically how we're going to agree to operate around this in society. So now AI is happening, like social media happened, and 20 years from now it'll be even bigger in the Senate, and people will be trying to outlaw more of it because we'll have learned more lessons, I would expect. But I can only hope it goes the positive route and not the negative route as we grow and advance there.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm skeptical. Like the social media example is really good, right? Like if y'all like saw the testimony of like, I think it was Zuckerberg and like a congressperson like asking how like Facebook makes money, like the viral clip that went around everywhere. And I'm like, these people have not grasped like how advertising on social media works like 20 years later. And we're expecting them to figure out how to like police large language models. Like it's not, we're doomed. That I will like very openly, right? Like, we are doomed. Like there is zero shot of there being like real good government regulations in AI, especially in the United States.
I love it.
And it's the reality. Like we're nowhere close to it. Like we have not figured out how to do like solve problems that are like 20, 30, 40 years old. People are still trying to figure out what like free speech online means, like what content can be regulated or not, like who's responsible for content that's posted. Like all of these things are still hotly debated. Talking about like what's copyrighted IP, all of that is gonna like they're nowhere close to having real conversations about this in a way that can actually pass a law that will help anybody. Which again, like that's scary, right? Like this is where I'm just like, I see why folks are like sitting down and thinking about it and then still scared too, right? Like there's like fear, like a little bit of excitement, and then fear again. Like, and I think that's reasonable. Like I think there's really good reasons to be scared. There's really good reasons to be slow with this. There's really good reasons to advocate for better things and like hold people accountable ourselves. But in terms of like waiting for some top-down regulations here, I'm just like that's not coming.
We've got 20 years of mistakes to make, and then we'll see the regulations.
Yeah, and then in 20 another years. Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
Human history speaks to our ability, if anything, to make mistakes and find new ways. Same old ways and return ways, whatever other ways we'd like to make mistakes. I'm curious from your perspective, what with all of this, right? Because I think this is, as we're talking, right, it's becoming more clear for me, even though it was clear before, right? Like why people get overwhelmed when we're talking about this conversation and what really can become kind of such a big thing that we're looking at. Because this is, as much as we want to talk about how AI can be helpful and the negatives and positives, there is a lot going around AI from philosophical level to how we use it to what we do. So I'm curious, you doing a lot of this professional development now, what are kind of, when you're coming to educators trying to help them grasp their minds around AI and kind of figure out what are the like top 3 things that you're like, this at the very base level, this is what you need to be aware of, whether it's cautionary or positive, whatever that is. What is that you point people towards?
Yeah. I start with the detectors. That's my go-to, like first thing that I need everyone to know is that like AI detection is a lost cause. And so kids will be able to cheat on your assignments. Like your traditional assignments are a lost cause if you send them home with students. Any assignment that you come up with, AI can do. And if not, like by December 31st of this year, like sure, right? Like there's very few things that like very few homework assignments I can envision that they can't do. The second is that doesn't mean that like you have to suddenly like become an expert in AI and like learn how to use it and like have adopted in your classroom. You can return to lots of things that we already know work in education. Like you can have debates in your classroom. You can have Socratic dialogues in your classroom. You can have a case study method where you're cold calling students. Like these are things that educators have used for hundreds of years, some thousands of years, that work for our students. And they would still work in an AI world, right? Like you can still have students go home and prepare in whatever way they want for any of these activities, whether it be an in-class like role-playing activity, an in-class simulation activity, all things that teachers have used it in like one-off cases of at least, right? Give a presentation in class, like have a question and answer period afterwards. We're just like, at least like start there. Go back to like thinking about, if you want to think about making your class serve better for your students, know that trying your traditional assignments and having students be able to detect, like being able to detect that is a lost cause. That doesn't mean you have to like fully become an AI expert. You can still go back and do things you're really good at. And then here's how it saves your time. And please, like, here's some really good reasons why like you should start incorporating it if you're not fully ready to think about how you would have it incorporated within your classroom. And those are my like 3. If I can like, if those 3 things, like if I've got those 3 things in folks' heads when I leave the room, it's a win. Like everything else, like, you know, it's icing, cherries, all that other stuff.
Well, I'll helpfully pivot that into like an ad moment for your sake. So Socrat.ai and Pedagog.ai can both help instructors do those things. I'm seeing a little bit of information about like a free versus premium with Pedagog.ai. Like, talk to us about that. What can teachers start doing with these tools today?
Yeah, so we put out lots of free content through Pedagog. There's webinars that we'll do often in collaboration. We just had a civics one that was free. We have an early learning one in January that's free. There's some paid webinars that are like PD. There are courses that are paid. Our Instagram shares way too much information. We're just like out there having fun on Instagram, really. And like people have reacted that way too. And we saw like the following go from like, we had like 2 followers when we were like a company facing like doing projects to like 12,000 followers since then, just because like teachers are like, okay, like,
oh wow,
this is interesting content. Yeah, so like, and like the teachers are engaged. We share prompts, we share news updates, we share our tools. It's kind of a little bit of everything to make sure that like if there's only one place you want to go for this kind of stuff, like our Instagram is definitely it. I learned something.
And that Instagram, what is that?
It's
Instagram?
Pedagogy.Cloud. Yeah, it's at Pedagogy.Cloud. Yeah, and
awesome.
so. Yeah, and then we have like all of our tools right now are available for free. We do only district plans right now with Socrat. So any teacher who goes in there and plays with it can play with it for free as long as they want the school year. We're kind of just like letting folks. It's again like this is just meant like to convince people that this is cool. And so like unless like we're gonna get like massive amounts of students on there, we're kind of just letting folks play around with it and kind of see the potential and see how they can embrace it. And Pedagog similarly, there's a free version of everything. All the tools, and there's premium versions that like use higher level language algorithms because I have to pay money to those language models in order to provide those tools at those levels. And so there's a super nominal fee to cover that right now. But yeah, we kind of want like bigger buy-in from like districts and administrators. That's for like for every like random teacher, like we're just trying to like help in whatever way we can. And so like there's lots of resources available. We're always like going to have conversations. Like if someone like scheduled a call with any of me, like me and my staff members, like we'd all just like hop on a call and have a conversation. Like this is fun, right? Like there's so much interesting things here. There's so many like long-term things for us to like. These conversations are always going to save education. And so we just need to have more of them, right? Like there's just more people talking about this. And so we're happy to have that in whatever form.
I love it.
That's awesome.
So you've got a direct website that's PritenShah.com, PritenShah.com. Pedagog.ai is a website. Socrat.ai is a website. We got the Instagram out there. Anything else you want to leave folks with link wise? We'll make sure these 10 things are in the show notes too.
Yeah, the book link would be great. I think the book is a great place for somebody to start who wants like something that they can carry around, get a full overview of everything, and then know what else to navigate. It's built to be like really. It's not like a 500-page book. It's not like written in really like deep, right? Like coding language. It's meant to really be like it's lots of bullet points, lots of like numbered lists of like here's what you need to know in order to be able to like have more conversations and explore more about this.
That's awesome. That's so cool. For those listening, just a reminder, that's AI in the Future of Education, Teaching in the Age of Artificial Intelligence. We'll link that in the website page if you're curious for checking it out. I know I'm going to check it out and take a look. So I would highly encourage it. Go check that out.
This has been awesome, Priten. This is your introduction to the Hitech Podcast, our introduction to you. I hope you'll be back for stuff that you're doing is great, but if you just want to come talk AI, and this is the shop. Yeah. This is where we noodle and we make it work. So welcome to the cloud.
Tonight,
welcome to the family.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was a blast today.
All right, folks, we are going to do a quick wrap up here in just a second, and hold on for the end of the episode.
Woo! Okay, that was, I say this all the time, but it's like, that was a journey. That was an experience. Oh man, I don't even know what to say to some of those things. It's interesting, the dynamic of this interview. I don't know where your thoughts are, but like, we've talked to a bunch of people about AI, okay? And it comes from a bunch of different directions, right? And usually I can like pinpoint where someone is on the spectrum. I don't know if I could put him on the spectrum. I don't like
he kept surprising me too.
Yeah, at one end he's excited about where things are going. At the other end, he's like totally making jokes about how social media platforms are not capable of, and Silicon Valley is not capable of policing AI because they can barely police their own actions. Like, what are they going to do for
preach louder?
Yeah, it was cool. There's a lot of rich stuff in that conversation, for sure.
Yeah, and I think that while some of the policy stuff, it's almost too soon to talk policy, right? Like, they're even the laws that exist aren't. They're not. The letters aren't even dry.
Doing sometimes, like every other day, it's changing. So trying to like put something into place, I do think is it's just too early for that. We don't know enough of the direction it's going.
But I think that balance we saw in Priten's disposition and the conversation we were having, like between skepticism and optimism, is appropriate. Like, Priten's got ideas about what we can do and how we can use it today, but he's healthily expecting or waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like we're not going to have an open sandbox forever. Right now, it's as open as a sandbox is ever going to be for AI. It will only get more and more restricted moving forwards. And that can be good, that can be bad. Like there's a lot of innovation that's possible because we don't have limits at the moment. The sky is the limit. But as we naturally find barriers or issues around AI, we'll start to see policy come into place. And I think he made a good point to say, when you're speaking to civics, like civics starts with how we as humans try to be good humans. Then naturally, as we try to be good humans together, right? That's kind of the relationship of civics. He's pointing at like if we do the right thing with AI, we might not have as many problems as we've had with social media. Some of those problems with social media, with their advertising, with the, I would say the abuse of underage folks, but maybe just the misuse or not enough privacy and security controls earlier for people under the age of 18. Like those things were because somebody wanted to turn a profit, and everybody's going to want to turn a profit on AI too, but maybe we'll have enough folks on the philosophical side who are trying to drive for the good that we see the thing go better before it gets worse. Maybe we've got an opportunity.
I mean, I will try to be optimistic. I will try. My take on this, that like if history communicates anything, it communicates that like we often don't. Do the better. Yeah. Like there are absolutely moments in history where we, good wins out. We overcome those things, but they're often driven by money. So like my hot take. That said though, I appreciate Priten's perspective of not looking at it all negative. There's a lot of good uses, ways teachers, professors can use AI. The stuff he's doing with the chatbots, the professional development he's doing, the ways he's helping people see how to use it. Just because something could go bad doesn't mean we shouldn't pursue doing it well, right?
Right.
There is countless. While I joke about history saying that we do horrible things, there's also countless perspectives of history of technology advancements that we have used to make the world a better place, and I think. I think we like to look at these things always like it's a this or that. Like we're either going to use it for good or we're going to use it for bad. No, if history is going to say to anything, if I can make any solid prediction, okay, here's Josh Schwartz's hot take from the Hitech Podcast. Okay, when it comes to AI, we will do both. Okay,
right.
We will have some things that we do great that I think could help education, could make advancements, and then we are going to royally screw the pooch in multiple places. Like for sure. That's part of being human. Just my hope is that we can find more good ways to leverage it, and there's definitely some stuff we can even be doing now that can be helpful, from the chatbot stuff he's talking about to just the way teachers integrate it and use it.
when I think about, I'm pretty sure it's those dancing robots from Boston Dynamic has the dancing robots, and like the amazing things they continue to do to make those better at dancing and stuff like that. I see the Terminator. I see the Terminator dancing on my dead body, like on my grave. That's what I envision. And yet I know that those robots that are learning to dance and doing all that stuff come from that same technology I just mentioned that is behind that life-saving tool and technology, like the Da Vinci and things like that in medical, that do surgeries on humans all the time and save lives. Like that's, you can't not acknowledge both of those things. Yes, this robot that we're equipping to do potentially harmful things, if the Terminator dystopian future happened, is the same technology, is the same science that's being used to save lives, to eradicate cancer, to try and destroy AIDS. Like the big things in the world that are out there always go in both directions. So here we are. Let's take the best that we can to hope AI, for the classroom's sake, will make teaching and learning better and make teaching easier to do and learning more effective, right? We've had a few guests on the podcast who clearly their tools would make teaching easier, but a few of them, like My School AI, have made the point that we want to make sure that learning becomes more effective. If we have the AI tools there to help the learner learn and reinforce the content, that's just as important as making it easier to teach, right? To make the content easier to develop, or to make the platforms easier to use. That's all teaching stuff. But if we can have the AI help the learners learn too, we've doubled our efforts on both fronts, on the teaching side and the learning side, and I just love to see it happen. Let's hope for that, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. I was definitely listening to all of that, not slowly dying behind a muted mic.
Folks, he was muted. He was coughing off to the side, but he's fine. He's fine.
I'm fine. I think I've recovered now. So yeah, for sure. Well, that is this episode. Next episode, episode 134. I know it's a surprise that it comes after 133. We will be continuing our AI conversation. Next week, Will and I are going to be talking about, is it okay to generate curriculum with AI? Will and I have some thoughts. We have some perspectives. We know you've been waiting to do it until we give you the answer. So we are going to be going to be looking at that in episode 134. We're also going to be looking at the tool diffit.me. I got that right? I feel like
I think so.
Sure.
Yeah.
That seems how it should be pronounced. We obviously know so much about it. We're going to be talking about it next episode, episode 134 of the Hitech Podcast. Again, you can find us on Twitter and YouTube at Hitech Podcast. You can email us at inbox@hitechpod.us and find us on our website, hitechpod.us. Thank you again for joining us for another week as we continue to learn what it looks like to harness technology in the classroom, whether online or in person. See ya.
See ya.